If mortals were present, they would have no idea what was happening, let alone respond. In total, Li Qingshan had swallowed a total of 8 golden cores. What's he trying to do? He actually needs so many golden cores. Is he trying to break through to Demon Commander? That's impossible. Once he triggers the heavenly tribulation, even if he barely manages to survive it, he'll definitely be on the brink of death. It won't be of any help to this battle. No, we can't let him continue like this. The Corpse King also sensed that something was amiss, so he immediately gathered all the corpse commanders. There was no response. The Buddha slaying sword embryo lay before him. It seemed just as ordinary as before, without the glow of a god artifact at all. Little N had basically poured half of the corpses he had refined this time into the Buddha slaying sword embryo. The pieces of the corpse commanders fell down, turning into samadhi flames of white bone and merging with the Buddha slaying sword embryo. Only then did the sword shine with white, half-transparent light. A skull flew below Little N's feet. She stepped on it gently and swung her sword. Let's go. That sword is far too terrifying. What? It's that formation again. The corpse commanders scattered, but they were forced back by the huge, house-sized skulls. The skulls cackled strangely, wrapped in white fire as they constantly revolved. When Little N released them from the Blood Sea banner, she also released the 26 skull prayer beads that she had refined, assembling the skeleton demon formation. Normally, the corpse commanders would have been able to breach the skeleton demon formation in just a few seconds. In that instant, there was a flash of light. Little N did not stop at all. She stepped on a skull and used the force to leap back, shuttling back. In the end, her figure had already become indiscernible. All they saw was a streak of white light turning and reflecting within the skeleton demon formation. The skeleton demon formation constantly shrank before dispersing loudly in the end. Not a single corpse commander remained. All that remained were pieces of burning corpses, which also merged with one another and poured into the Buddha slaying sword embryo. The hilt of the sword vaguely formed a skeleton, sitting in the lotus position. The Buddha slaying sword embryo had finally achieved initial success. It was not just the cultivators. Even the Corpse King was stunned, as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over him. Perhaps the legends were true. I have to kill it, regardless of the cost. The Corpse King's eyes shone with brutal green light. His 10 fingernails burst out like bamboo shoots, swinging forward and actually all targeting Little, and 10 streaks of black light shot out furiously. The void-bellied Ghost King was pierced by a streak of black light, unable to hold on any longer. It dispersed and revealed the Dark Queen's figure. Her black hair drifted about as she suddenly looked back. Be careful! Gu Yenying immediately swung her jade, folding fan, and rushed to provide assistance. She was already extremely certain of her guess. When the Golden Core cultivators died to the Moon Devil earlier, the Dark Queen did not even bat an eyelid, yet she paled in fright over this otherworldling now. She probably did not even care so much about her own life. However, the Corpse King seemed to have anticipated this. He swung his huge hand. The fierce wind swept over like a tornado, forcing Gu Yenying to slow down. It was already too late for her to provide assistance. The flames in Little N's eye sockets shone brightly as she stared ahead. She wielded the sword with both hands, even abandoning her control over the Blood Sea banner and skull prayer beads. All that remained in her mind were the sword style, sword technique, sword move, and sword intent. There was the comprehension that came from it. There was also the knowledge from her awakened memories. Afterwards, it all vanished, reduced to nothingness. A skeleton sat in the lotus position, Buddha slaying. The Buddha slaying sword embryo spat out a streak of light several meters long. There was a flash. A fingernail was cleaved in half, brushing past her. Little and retreated. The streak of light was as swift as a dragon. She turned around and cut off another fingernail. She swung her sword, swung her sword, swung her sword. The streak of light danced about wildly, cutting off 4 fingernails in a row. The 5th fingernail filled her vision, but she was unable to stop it in time. The Buddha-slaying sword embryo was placed before her. Little Anne's heart surged as she said calmly, "This is the limit." Boom, 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 boom. 5 huge fingernails that resembled stone beams struck Little, and one after another. Immediately, cracks appeared on the white bones. The sound of shattering was as resounding as thunder. Even the rumbling of the collision was unable to drown it out. Boom. Dust filled the air. Little and slammed into a hill viciously. There was no more sound. The Buddha-slaying sword embryo was the strongest, but it still required the user's own strength to wield it. Little and had only undergone the first heavenly tribulation right now. He could use the Buddha-slaying sword embryo to kill a group of corpse commanders who were at higher cultivation realms than him, but he was powerless against a corpse king's sure-kill strike. This was an absolute difference in strength. It could not be made up for through external items. It swept through millions of corpse soldiers. Little Anne, who had been entrusted with all their hopes, had also reached his limit. Over half of the Golden Core cultivators had died in battle. The Dark Queen had failed. Despair appeared on the Marquis of Rui's face. "It's over. It's all over." Gu Yenying raised invisible shockwaves. The sky was dusky in all directions. Her pupils narrowed. Over 100 and mountains her gaze became as sharp as silently. The beyond this domain, were like she could vaguely make out hanging high in the sky, shining with sharp light at the tips. Those were not a single moon, but characters engraved on corpses. His scarlet-red pupils were like the descent of a demon star. As it was said that its appearance would definitely bring destruction. The current world of the 9 provinces he strode over, rival, making his way like a flock of vultures circling the heads of people on the brink of death. The ground would shake waiting for them to collapse. The Dark Queen dodged too, before swooping down like a mountain, feasting on their corpses. Was pressing forward. Compared to the world of the 9 provinces, King, this place is already closer to the hungry ghost realm. She raised her head ghost realm and asked, about to descend. "How dare you injure her? Should I leave? Injure? No, there's still one person. The next one will be you." The corpse king lowered his head. The cry and look of an ox rang out. He was extremely deep and drawn out, as if it was like the first from the depths glimmer of dawn. The red sun about to rise gently. Victory was about to arrive. The hills felt his strength and fell like the waves of the sea. And stronger. An iron hoof himself and from the hungry ghost realm. The ground sank and cracked. No one could repel him at this time. In this place, Li Qingshan lowered his head, clenched his fist, and punched out. Dense, black cracks spread and interweaved on his fist. His fist was as heavy as a mountain. At first glance, it gave off the illusion of sluggishness, as if it was advancing inch by inch. With each inch it advanced, the black cracks overlapped with each other, until it became pitch black in the end. It was like a black gauntlet, filled with the accumulation of countless tremors. "You overestimate yourself." The corpse king laughed aloud. He stood with his arms crossed, looking down from above. His huge, withered hand clenched into a fist, wrapped in surging corpse chi. He raised his arm high into the air, stretching it to the limit. The bone spikes on his elbow seemed even more vicious. Like a roaring dragon, he descended from the sky, destroying everything. Chapter 5:55. Time seemed to freeze at this moment. Under the vast and gloomy sky, two figures that were as tall as mountains stood facing each other. There was no anger or hatred on Li Qingshan's face, only calmness, tranquil and motionless as the earth. Divine power flowed from every corner of his body and from the ground beneath him. Bit by bit, it gathered into an ocean and merged with his body. It was as boundless as the earth. The entire world disappeared. The corpse king, that was as majestic as a mountain, gradually became blurry in his eyes. Even the huge fist that was rumbling towards him no longer had any pressure. It was just a roadblock, something that people would always encounter in their lives. Just shatter it, looking at the pair of resolute and tranquil crimson eyes. The zombie king's heart stirred. What's going on with this little demon? If he possessed the flames of the phoenix, then so be it, but he possessed so many variations too. From his aura, he had only undergone the first heavenly tribulation, yet he possessed great strength that even corpse commanders struggled to match. Even so, there's still a huge gap between us, yet he dares to challenge me? Fine, I'll crush you into minced meat. The corpse king's mind moved, and 4 bone spurs suddenly protruded from his fist, whistling as they pierced towards Li Qingshan's face. Before their fists collided, they pierced through Li Qingshan. The punch became more and more dangerous, but Li Qingshan remained unmoved. Changing his moves at the last minute also meant that he lacked confidence. Unknowingly, there was a subtle shift in his aura. Time returned to normal. The black shockwave instantly shattered the bone spurs. Its destructive power was extremely strong. Even the corpse king was shocked. The moment the 2 fists collided, there was a momentary silence. The overly loud sound was like a gigantic object that could not be stuffed. Demons were powerful, the narrow ears, and could not be defeated. It gave this power the illusion that it was silent. How can I lose to you? After was his dignity as a never-ending rumble had been viciously offended. The quiet land was like a raging sea, as corpse cheese surged around his arm like dragons and snakes, and merging with it one after another. It turned pitch cracks open and pressed and down viciously, one after another. Bang! Without a moment of rest. Li Qingshan's colossal body smoke and dust filled the air. He spun around in the sky. Like an avalanche, landing firmly on his corpse, chi poured down from the corpse king's body, one hand crushing the demon, and slid back. It several hundred meters due to the great inertia, squeezing and tearing at his body. He really is a corpse king did his best to channel even his physical strength king's power into nothing to scoff at. He raised his head high. That's also because my into the tiger demon transformation, letting out a thunderous spirit turtle transformation, torrential phoenix flames erupted from the monster core. I can't expelling the corpse energy and control the power of the 5th layer of the ox swelled up, or his blood vessels appeared, and his veins bulged. He had managed to hold his own against the corpse king as a demon general in the ground, and not be killed in a single step back. Yet he still felt dissatisfied, and the sound of metal twisting and breaking could be heard. If the Dark Queen he didn't care about and the others knew what he was thinking, they probably would not believe him at all. A stalemate. However, that was exactly what happened. Eyes widened in disbelief. Li Qingshan had only thrown the power of his punch, but before it had even unable to smash this little demon into tiny cracks had already appeared on his arm bones. A strange and powerful tiger came from the small demon's fist, as steel could not endure. And even when he used the spirit all turtle the cultivators' minds were stunned, allowing his thoughts to reach a state of demon general. He was unable to confronting a corpse king head on. Every single bit of power exclaimed in her heart. He was like a child brandishing a huge blade. How majestic! He only managed to aim definitely the blade not a regular demon, but he was unable to unleash the blade's power encounter. Did as a matter of fact, to obtain. He could even injure powerful nature if he was careless. The Dark Queen ingested another abilities and transformations were interconnected, and with a frown, any shortcoming but she found would prevent him from unleashing his full strength. This was the power of the 9 transformations, but they were extremely conflicted and divine. They among both the 9 major transformations, yet they also hoped just the Moon Devil could repel minor transformation was enough to make his strength rise in an overwhelming manner. Whether his strength had increased by 20 times, 50 times, or even more, he was unable to estimate right now, nor did he have the time to estimate. He gritted his teeth and swallowed the surging blood back into his stomach. The flames of the phoenix curled around him and healed his wounds. He stood up and made his way towards the Corpse King again. The Corpse King said coldly, "I'd like to see just how many punches you can take from me." Boom, boom, boom. The ground shook violently again and again. The originally hilly area around Burial Mound Mountain had undergone an earth-shattering transformation due to the repeated earthquakes, turning into a yellow desert. Within 100 miles, every pebble seemed to have been carefully crushed and ground, turning into fine sand. The Corpse King stood motionlessly on the gate of hungry ghosts, sending Li Qingshan flying time and time again, filling the air with dust. But every time, he would immediately stand up again and walk towards this undefeatable enemy. The Corpse King's face was twisted as he stared at the approaching Li Qingshan, as if he was looking at a monster. With each clash, Li Qingshan's strength grew stronger and stronger. Under the immense pressure, he was able to force out the ox demon's strength bit by bit. If he could not completely destroy it, there was no way he could defeat it. Gu Yenying noticed that the Corpse King's arm was trembling slightly, only calming down after a moment. She thought incredulously, "He injured the Corpse King. I'm afraid no one would believe me even if I told them." She then shook her head. "However, that's all. Pure strength is not enough for him to defeat the Corpse King. The Corpse King chose to fight with him only for the dignity of a king. Otherwise, it would be very difficult for him to deal with all kinds of spells and methods. More importantly, the Corpse King is in an invincible position and is not afraid of stalling for time." The specks of green light in the surroundings became clearer and clearer, spreading into the distance like an ocean. Blurry forms could already be seen, strange, twisted, huge, ethereal, and monstrous. Li Qingshan punched again. Under the gaze of those gazes, the Corpse King felt deeply humiliated. "Since you want to die so much, I'll fulfill your wish." The withered hand turned into a palm and bypassed the fist. It used 3 fingers to grab Li Qingshan's wrist, pulling and pulling. Li Qingshan could not control this excessively powerful force in the first place. Whether it was his reaction or battle technique, he could not compare to the Corpse King. The punch missed. Bang! Black shockwaves spread in all directions, shaking the void. At the same time, another withered hand pressed down on Li Qingshan's head. "It's over." Gu Yenying sighed faintly. The hungry ghost realm was about to descend. This last scene was indeed wonderful and did not disappoint her. Finally, she looked deeply at Li Qingshan, feeling somewhat regretful. "I thought we could travel together on this path of cultivation for a while. I didn't think we would have to say goodbye so soon. Perhaps we will meet again in the 6 paths of reincarnation. Gu Yening was about to turn and leave when she suddenly felt something strange. At this moment of life and death, the corners of Li Qingshan's lips curled up slightly, and he exhaled softly. A translucent white greatsword rose from behind him and pierced the corpse king's hand, piercing right through. The sword suddenly turned into white flames and madly burrowed into the wound. How could she not be present in his battle of life and death? Little and refined the corpse king's 10 fingernails, quietly
and healed
slashed
his
from
wounds.
left to right.
He then
towards
sneaked
the
up
corpse
from
king's
underground
waist.
just to wait for
The
this
corpse
opportunity
king
to
understood
inject
the
very
samadhi
well
flames
where the
of
truth
white
red
bone
was.
into the corpse
He raised
king's
his
body.
arm and
Their
swung it with
teamwork
all his
required
might.
no words,
Corpse chi
and was
gathered into a
extremely
huge
tacit,
wave,
and sent little
extremely
and
terrifying
flying coldness
Then
penetrated
he freed
deep
his
into the
hand
corpse
to block
king's
Li
heart.
Qingshan.
Activating
Although little
corpse
and
chi
immediately
could
charged
only
over,
suppress
the
the
prepared
samadhi
corpse
flames
king
of
would
white
not fall
bone,
for it so
but
easily
could not
again.
extinguish it.
Meanwhile,
The
the
white
final
flames
smear of
spread
blue
bit by bit
in
from
the
his
depths
palm,
of the
and he
horizon
waved
was
it
gradually
forcefully.
devoured
Boom.
by paleness.
His palm
This was
suddenly
the end.
exploded,
Even
and
if
a
Li
large hole
Qingshan and
appeared.
Little and worked together,
Only then did the
they would not
samadhi
be able to
flames
defeat a
of white
corpse
bone
king that had
get rid
become
of it.
serious,
How could
let
Li
alone in
Qingshan
such a short
let
amount
go
of
of such a
time.
good opportunity?
Although Li Qingshan
the burning
was
phoenix
confident
wings
that he
spread
could
out,
definitely
reaching
crush
a
the bastard
wingspan of
before
nearly
him if he could
300
raise
jom.
both the
The
tiger
clear
demon
cry
and
of
the
the
phoenix
phoenix
turtle
could be
to the
faintly
fifth
heard
layer
as he
time
soared
waited
into
for
the
no
air
one.
and
Gu
punched
Yening
at the
glanced
corpse
over
king's
and
abdomen.
let out a soft
This series
gasp
of dazzling
surprise.
attacks was to
She
hide
saw
the
that
true
Li
killing
Qingshan's
move.
punch
Below
that had
him,
missed earlier
the
had
Buddha
left
slaying
behind
sword
a
spat
thin,
out another
black mark
10
in
jom
space.
of sword radiance.
She called out, "Bombard the space around him."
Chapter 556. The Legend of the Great Sage 19 _ The Legend of the Great Sage is free to read _ Chapter 19 crack, seeking monthly vote, Gu Yening said silently in her heart. She looked at Li Qingshan and was stunned for a moment. Without any hesitation, she fiercely punched the void in front of her. It was very difficult to hit the enemy, but it was easy to miss. Anyway, even if it really hit the Corpse King, it was not enough to cause fatal damage to him. Might as well see what kind of brilliant plan this bird woman had. I seem to have broken something. Li Qingshan could vaguely hear the sound of something shattering. The sound was very small, like a mosquito's buzz, but when he calmed down and listened carefully, it was like the sky had collapsed, shaking the soul. The formless void was like a transparent glassware. Black cracks spread across the void, like interweaving lightning bolts. They disappeared in a flash like lightning. The Corpse King's withered hand was shrouded in surging corpse energy. It slid across the sky
Li
like a
Qingshan
black
looked
cloud,
at his own hand,
and then fell down,
also somewhat in
completely
disbelief,
ignoring
I
the
didn't
shock
think
wave.
that after
It
cultivating
seems
Ox's
useless,
demon transformation
as
to
Li
the fifth
Qingshan was
layer,
thinking. He
Ox
saw
demon
a
tremors
piece of the
would have
black
such
cloud
power.
above his head was suddenly cut off.
A thought entered his
It was
sea of
so
consciousness.
smooth and straight, Stop spacing
as
out.
if someone had
This
measured it
realm
with a
is
ruler,
drifting in the void,
without a sound.
pulled by the world of the
three
9
pillar-sized
provinces,
fingers broke
and the
apart
hungry ghost
and
realm
fell from the
at
sky.
the same time.
Li
It has
Qingshan
already
turned his
become
body
extremely
and
weak,
avoided a few fingers.
and the gate of hungry
He
ghosts
saw that the cut
is
surface
its
was
weakest
smooth
point,
and neat,
like an Achilles
surpassing
heel.
any divine
That's
weapon.
why you can cause
He was also
such
puzzled.
destruction.
What is going on?
In a complete
Looking at
world,
the sky
such as the
carefully,
9 provinces,
he saw that although
it
the
would be
cracks
very
caused
difficult
by the
to
shock
have
wave had
such an
dissipated.
effect. There was a thin
Although
and
Gu
long
Yening
black
said
trace
so,
left in
she
the
did
sky,
not dare,
because
to
it
be
was
the
too
slightest
thin
bit
and
presumptuous.
small. If
The
one
level
did
of
not
power
pay
he
attention,
possessed
they would
was
not
so
be able to
high
notice
that
it
it
at all.
far surpassed
It was
her
probably
initial
not even
imagination.
comparable to a
Coupled
hair
with
of the
the various
Corpse King,
transformations
if he had
of his
hair.
theurgy.
That
This
black
fortuitous
line,
encounter
it was not ordinary
was probably
black or
unparalleled
ink black
in the entire
it was simply
9 provinces,
indescribable, as
not
if it
even
wanted to
herself.
suck in
One had
all
to
the
know
light.
that
In
he
the
was
eyes,
currently
there was
only a
an
demon
illusion
general.
of vision being
He
cut,
had only
as if the
cultivated
painting
for a very
paper
short
had
period
split.
of time.
All
And
the
his
scenery
control
on the
over
painting
his
had
power was
broken
not
along
focused
with it,
enough.
no matter
If
what
he
it was
continued
painted.
to advance,
Strong
he would
or
reach
weak,
the demon
because the
commander
most
realm,
fundamental
or even
thing
the demon
that
king
carried their
realm.
existence had
A
split.
demon king
Could
with
this be
immense
the
strength
shattering
that could shatter
of
the void
with
his
a single
punch
actually caused
even the veteran demon
effect
kings would
of
have to bow
shattering
their
the void.
heads in submission.
He had been
No,
devising
the entire
strategies.
Xia dynasty,
Even if there were all
would
kinds of
tremble
accidents
before him.
the Corpse
So
King,
that's how it is.
who had not escaped
Li
his control,
Qingshan understood,
finally
but
revealed a trace
he
of
was
fear.
not disappointed.
Everything in
Instead,
this world
his
was
confidence
contained in the
increased
corresponding
greatly.
space. He
Be it
grabbed
the
at the
world
air
of
with
the
both
9
hands,
prefectures
and the
or
power
the
of
6
tremors
paths of
continuously
reincarnation.
accumulated
The living
and
beings of the
intertwined
6
between his
paths,
5
corpses,
fingers.
demons,
They were
and
like
demons.
two
All of them
black
had to live in a
cocoons,
certain space,
accumulating terrifying
it was
power.
as if
Only
there was
when
a
he could
painting,
no longer
only
suppress
if there was a
it did
paper.
he push
It was
forward.
already
The Corpse
extremely
King roared
difficult for the
angrily,
person in the
and the
painting to
3
leave the
severed
paper,
fingers
let
suddenly
alone
flew
tear
up,
the paper.
twisting as
That
they
was
charged
an almost
towards Li
impossible
Qingshan.
task.
Li
Although the
Qingshan
Corpse
felt great
King
danger,
was
and
extremely
the tremors between his
powerful.
palms surged,
It did not
sending
have this
him
kind
flying.
of ability.
Boom,
It was
boom,
the
boom.
hungry ghost
The
realm
3 fingers
that was constantly
exploded at the
devouring
same
other
time in
worlds,
front of him,
and he
and
was
the bones
merely
turned
taking
into
advantage of
flying
the
fragments
situation
to
while
lead
the
the
flesh
way,
and blood
create some
rained down
favorable
like
factors,
a torrential rain,
and reap some
every
benefits.
fragment.
He
Every
had to
drop
use
of
the
rain
eye
contained
of a strange
immense
beast,
destructive power,
like the void devouring
and the power
beast,
was
to
no
achieve
less than the
this.
explosion
Only
of
the
3
legendary
golden
deities and
cores.
Buddhas were
Li
able to
Qingshan
travel
retracted his
freely in the
phoenix
void
wings,
realms,
and his entire
unaffected by
body
the other
was
worlds.
enveloped
It
in
was
flames.
completely
He
unimaginable.
was fiercely sent
A little
flying
demon
100
could actually
kilometers
cause
away,
such an effect.
and only
Unless
after
the
tumbling
person in the
dozens of
painting
times
was
in the air
extremely
did he stabilize
powerful.
himself.
The person
Even
in the
though he had
painting could
avoided
leave
the
the
core of the
painting
explosion
and
he
ascend
was
to a
still
higher
heavily
world.
injured.
This was
His
called
internal organs
ascension.
were completely
But
shattered.
that was impossible.
And his brain
Otherwise,
was a mess.
it was the
his
power
eyes were
he
blind,
possessed,
and his
it was
ears
a very
were deaf.
high level of
His
cultivation,
bones were exposed,
a power
and
that
they were covered in
completely
cracks.
surpassed
The
this
Corpse
world.
King opened his mouth and spat out a black torrent towards Li Qingshan. It was like a black, venomous dragon, and it contained an intense, poisonous aura of death.
Once hit, even the phoenix flames would be extinguished and his tiger bones would be melted into a puddle of corpse liquid. This was something the Corpse King would only use when fighting against opponents of the same level in the Hungry Ghost realm. It was related to his advancement to Corpse Emperor. This corpse liquid was extremely difficult to accumulate, and he had never thought that he would use it at this time. However, he was not willing to give Li Qingshan the chance to get close. Go, North Moon. Success or failure depends on this. At this critical moment of life and death, Gu Yenying urged Li Qingshan to attack instead. She loosened her 2 fingers, and the translucent feather gently floated out. It did not seem to be very fast, and it drifted erratically, appearing and disappearing from time to time. In the blink of an eye, it landed in front of the Corpse King and silently exploded, turning into a spherical film of light. It constantly expanded and enveloped the Gate of Hungry Ghosts. It was like a land under the blazing sun, and the scene within it warped and changed. The Corpse King was bewildered, but it did not feel any harm or restriction. It could only treat it as a diversion. Little brother Qingshan, it's up to you. Her voice entered Li Qingshan's sea of consciousness, carrying an indistinct laughter. Even in this critical moment, she was still relaxed and at ease. Even in the face of life and death, she was still as carefree as the wind. Watch me. Li Qingshan clenched his teeth and laughed viciously. Wind howled behind him and flames surged. Boom! He was like a flaming meteor, dragging a long tail of flames behind him as he charged at the Corpse King against the corpse liquid that was like a poisonous dragon. From afar, the corpse liquid seemed extremely small, but when it came closer, it was like a surging river, surging and pouring down. Howls, strange laughter, and ghostly cries rang out in all directions. Countless corpses and ghosts danced chaotically outside the domain. Their appearances could be clearly seen with the naked eye, and some were even larger than the Corpse King. An enormous aura seemed to want to penetrate the domain, shocking everyone. In the instant that the Hungry Ghost realm was about to descend, whether they dodged or not, only death awaited them. The wings of wind and fire burned even more fiercely, illuminating the sky. They ignored the figures around them, ignored the corpse liquid in front of them, and headed straight for the Corpse King. At the crucial moment, a white figure leaped onto Li Qingshan's shoulder, little, and waved the Blood Sea banner, and an even more vast river of blood howled out, charging into the corpse liquid like a blood dragon. The 2 dragons fought intensely in the air. The poisonous dragon pounced continuously, wanting to charge at Li Qingshan. However, the blood dragon firmly entangled it. Blood and corpse water splattered continuously, giving off dark red smoke. Li Qingshan continued to advance, not even looking at the intense battle above him that concerned his life and death. He looked straight ahead, forward, and forward again. Yellow sand flew behind him. Before he could land, he was already several kilometers away. The Corpse King felt threatened. Ignoring the depletion of corpse liquid, it spat with all its might. The poisonous dragon howled, shattering the blood dragon and spiraling downwards. When Li Qingshan was still 5 kilometers away from the Gate of Hungry Ghosts, his figure paused slightly. His knees bent slightly, and he raised his iron fist high. A shock wave appeared beneath his iron hooves. A wild roar. The poisonous dragon missed. Li Qingshan shot out like a cannonball, his fist smashing into the distorted space. Boom! The space shook violently. With his fist as the center, black cracks spread rapidly, covering the sky above the Gate of Hungry Ghosts. The Marquis of Rui came from an aristocratic clan and was obsessed with fear and hatred. He failed to see through her strange behavior, But that did not mean other cultivators could not see or see through her either. Silencing them was necessary. A demonic sect, like the Umbral sect, had always viewed human lives as worthless. They were not bound by any morals or laws at all, acting as they pleased. Even if it were not related to this secret, she would probably take action for the sake of these cultivators' golden cores and treasures. With an additional golden core, her chances of overcoming the third heavenly tribulation would be slightly greater. As for Gu Yenying, she was on relatively good terms with her, and Gu Yenying stood aloof from the world. She was not a person of the so-called righteous path. She was rather heartless, but she was not vicious. Most importantly, she wasn't confident that she could kill him here. This was how people of the demonic path did things. As long as they could increase their cultivation by just a tiny bit, it would be worth it no matter how many fellows they killed. In her opinion, cultivators like the Marquis of Rui had lived in peace for far too long. They had forgotten about the era when cultivators fought and killed one another. Gu Yenying bowed slightly and bowed gracefully. Please exchange this friendship for 3 golden cores. The Dark Queen immediately tossed 3 golden cores to Gu Yenying. One of them was pure white and extraordinary. It was the Marquis of Rui's golden core. Gu Yenying ingested it without minding it at all and began to meditate and refine it. Only then did the Dark Queen stop worrying, completely dispelling her killing intent. Afterwards, they fell silent, quietly waiting to return to the world of the 9 provinces. Even Li Qingshan had no idea whether Gu Yenying and the Dark Queen had colluded with each other through soul senses. However, from the beginning until the end, the Dark Queen and Little and said nothing to each other. Only when the sky lit up did the surrounding scenery gradually clear. The speed at which the sun, moon, and stars fluctuated in the sky returned to normal. The moment they returned to the world of the 9 provinces, Li Qingshan dove into the ground with Little and he was afraid to look back. He sensed several tremendous auras illuminating the night sky like torches. Several divine wills swept past his body, as if they wanted to see through him. In that moment, the spirit turtle gave several warnings. Each time, it was terrifying enough to almost kill him, but it did not launch an attack. The sky was enveloped by a thick layer of clouds, constantly surging and changing. A scale and a claw, pitch black like ink, could be vaguely seen moving through the clouds, vaguely clashing with a heaven-leaning sword on the other side of the horizon. That was a clash that the current Li Qingshan could not take part in. It was a game between kings. The man stood in the sky with his hands behind his back. Looks like you've benefited quite a lot from this trip, the master of the Umbral sect said. The Dark Queen told him everything that had happened on the Gate of Hungry Ghosts, but it differed drastically from what Gu Yenying had told her. She confessed to the fact that she had killed the Marquis of Rui and the others, but she still did not reveal Little Anne's identity. Very good. The master of the Umbral sect smiled sinisterly. Do these little bastards really think the cultivation community is a good place for them to live freely and happily? Have you captured their souls? Yes. We'll torture them first and extract some useful information from them before sending them into the Myriad Ghost Banner as a sacrifice. If you can undergo the heavenly tribulation, the position of sect master will definitely belong to you in the future. The Myriad Ghost Banner will end up in your hands sooner or later. Chaos is about to rise. The laws of cultivation have been twisted by the Great Xia Empire for so long, so it's about time for them to reveal their true colors. The master of the Umbral sect revealed his pearly white teeth and sneered silently. Xianyue shivered and shrank into the Dark Queen's arms. The Dark Queen stroked Xianyue in comfort and thought, "Master, Even if you're unwilling to hand the position of sect master to me, I won't agree to it. You have no idea what my child has become right now. Although I've lost my identity as a human, it's nothing compared to the power I've obtained. You're my flesh and blood. Even if you've been reduced to bones, you still belong to me. You'll return to my side one day. If we work together, the Green Province will be ours. In the boundless hungry ghost realm, the death of a corpse king could only be regarded as a tiny ripple. It could not kick up much of a fuss. It would settle down very soon. However, the appearance of the white flames kicked up a ripple that rapidly extended into the distance. After who knew how long, a strand of black smoke shot through the gloomy sky, flying off into the distance. A mountain range that stretched several hundred kilometers lay on the horizon like a colossal beast. Only when they approached it did they discover that it was not a mountain range, but a true colossal beast. More accurately, it was the skeleton of a colossal beast. It was impossible to imagine just how powerful and terrifying it had been when it was still alive. Numerous malevolent bone spikes of various sizes pointed to the sky like lone peaks. In particular, the single horn on the colossal beast's skull was unreachable. Figures stood at the top of the lone peak, all of different sizes and appearances, but their auras were all equally powerful, even more powerful than the Corpse Kings. They were currently discussing and communicating with one another. What's happened? Why have you summoned us in such a hurry? Some were confused. What? The legendary white sacred flame has appeared. Some were surprised and doubtful. That's just a legend. The colors of flames have always come in all shapes and sizes. It's impossible for them to be too powerful in the great thousand worlds, so why would they come to destroy the hungry ghost realm? It's just a corpse king. If it's dead, then it's dead. Why have you summoned us over something so trivial? There were even some who felt disdain. Cough, cough, shut up. Do you want me to eat all of you for making so much noise? A stooped figure walked up to the giant horn with the help of a walking stick. His entire body was wrapped in strips of white cloth, and he carried a few large flags on his back with evil beasts drawn on them. His first sentence was as deep as an old man's, but his second sentence was like the colossal beast beneath his feet had come to life. It roared and roared, causing the heavens and earth to tremble. All the ghouls quietened down and hurriedly bowed to him. With him as the center, black shockwaves radiated outwards. Black cracks spread out like a spider's web, shattering countless divine abilities. The phoenix spread its wings. Wind and fire burned and danced. With a streak of fiery light, it broke out of the encirclement. "Don't let him escape," roared a demon commander. "Escape? Humph!" Li Qingshan flapped his wings and instantly approached the demon commander closest to him. He used the tiger demon digs out the heart that he had not used in a long time. When the demon commander assumed human form, he was a stocky, dark-skinned man. Two sharp fangs protruded from his mouth as he lunged at Li Qingshan. He was a wild boar demon. He did not take Li Qingshan's attack seriously at all. One of his innate divine abilities was his thick skin. In terms of defense, he was even stronger than Helicoverpa rosa. With a clang, the horns on Li Qingshan's head extended and blocked the fangs. His slender, fair hand was covered in black cracks. He pierced through the wild boar demon's skin and dug out a bloody heart. He stuffed it into his mouth and chewed a few times before swallowing. That caw earlier should have reduced your lifespan by 100 years at the very least, but looks like your lifespan is very long. Li Qingshan was stunned. MOU's ability really was strange and powerful. If it was a demon, then so be it. But if it were a human cultivator, having 100 years of their lifespan deducted was basically even more terrifying than being stabbed 10 times. In particular, some elderly cultivators would probably lose their lives on the spot. However, as it seemed, Mou had to pay a price for using this move. He could not use it consecutively, or he would be invincible if he cried out as soon as he saw people. This extremely terrifying innate ability was not particularly effective against Li Qingshan. As the saying went, a 1,000-year tortoise, a 10,000-year tortoise. Even he had no idea how long the lifespan of a spirit turtle that was close to a god was, while the phoenix was a symbol of eternal life. However, having 100 years of his lifespan deducted for no reason still left Li Qingshan extremely displeased. He asked again, "How do I remove the curse?" "It's very simple. Kill him. If it weren't for you, I would have been able to kill him," Li Qingshan said, but he also knew that just the innate ability Mou had used when he left made him very difficult to kill. Chapter 566. All right. Li Qingshan unfurled his wings of wind and fire and vanished into the horizon as a streak of light. Gu Yenying shielded her eyes with her hand. He sure was fast. "Big sis, are we just going to let the moon devil go like this and let him continue refining the water system?" A young girl flew over from the sky. She had thick eyebrows, large eyes, and a bright expression. If it were not for the bulge in her chest, she would have been mistaken for a boy at first glance. She wore the uniform of the White Wolf commander of the Hawkwolf Guard. She was only second to Gu Yenying in the Hawkwolf Guard of the Rui Commandery. Or what? Gu Yenying shot a glance at her. "Call me Commander. Big sis, you can't go easy on him just because he's interested in you. Otherwise, wouldn't all the men in the world be unkillable? Don't tell me you're actually interested in him, to the point where you've specially helped him out?" Gu Yenying pinched the young girl's chin and brought her face closer. "Don't tell me you're jealous? Even without me, he wouldn't have died here. I don't believe you." The young girl blushed and shook her head. "His powerful reinforcements will arrive very soon. If we keep this up until the child arrives, Mo, you really might be in some danger." Gu Yenying released the young girl. "That powerful? If you're done playing around, then go back to the Dragon Province. The Green Province is becoming more and more chaotic. Once you become embroiled in a battle like the one just now, even you'll be in danger." "Big sis, stop trying to coax me. I'm not going back. My royal brothers and sisters have already fought tooth and nail for the position of Marquis of Rui. You can see that the Rui Commandery is a great place that everyone wants to come to." The young girl was serious. It was difficult to tell whether she was acting coquettishly or ignorant. "I've come to be a marquis, not to be a follower like you. What's wrong with being a follower? You'll always have Big Sis to take care of you. As a marquis, I'll have to deal with a monster like the Moon Devil. And my royal brothers can't even become followers if they want to." "Then follow me." Gu Yenying swung her sleeve and took off into the air like a white hawk. In the blink of an eye, she turned into a white speck. "Big sis, wait for me." The young girl followed her in a hurry and called out from afar. Gu Yenying was not the only one watching Li Qingshan's battle with the demon commanders. There were also many cultivators watching from afar, using various methods. When they saw the internal strife among the demons, they all cheered inside. There were still many cultivators who wanted to take advantage of the situation, but after seeing the Moon Devil's powerful strength and cruel methods, they all gave up on this idea. Even if such a terrifying demon fought back before death, it was enough to drag a golden core cultivator to his grave, not to mention that he had not really shown any signs of fatigue from the beginning until now. Thus, Li Qingshan continued to refine the water veins without any obstructions. The current Li Qingshan apart from the top figures and monsters who had undergone the second heavenly tribulation, could only be subdued by kings who had undergone the third heavenly tribulation. There were very few people who could pose a fatal threat to him. He arrived at the end of another large river. The surging demon Qi refined the river, and the water god's seal flickered with light, gaining a thick, long trajectory. Li Qingshan could sense that the demon Qi in the spirit turtle's demon core had reached the limit. As long as he devoured the water spiritual Qi in the river, he would basically be able to break through to the fifth layer of the spirit turtle. After that, the heavenly tribulation would descend. After experiencing so many battles, he turned around and fought with the identity and power of a Foundation establishment cultivator. At first, he felt somewhat unfamiliar and uncomfortable, but he quickly became skilled and at ease. He used the two complementary cultivation methods and battle skills to their fullest. The sky brightened, and the sunlight shone on the sparkling snowy ground. The descendants of the Han family lay on the ground, panting. Li Qingshan sat on the snowy ground, looking somewhat exhausted. This exhaustion was not an act. After several months of fighting and refining, his mind was indeed very tired. When he finally saw her, he relaxed and stood up with his hands on his knees. Han Anjuan nodded slightly at Li Qingshan. These descendants of the Han family didn't really hate Li Qingshan that much. It was just that they had suppressed their emotions for too long and needed a battle like this to vent. However, Li Qingshan had given them a battle, using his own method to resolve this discontent. He had also proven his strength. He didn't care about how the Han family looked at him. He just didn't want Han Qiongji to receive too much suspicion from her family because of him. After all, they were her family. In the gloomy hungry ghost road, Han Angua held an ancient blade made from the rib of an unknown animal. There was not a trace of confusion on his face, and he was still as determined as before. He raised the blade and cut off the head of a corpse beast. At this moment, a blood-colored vortex appeared in the air. It grew larger and larger until it looked like a large door. A voice came from inside. "True warrior, your soul shouldn't have fallen into this land of death. Come, endless bloody battles await you." Han Angua's eyes shone brightly, and he dived into the blood-colored vortex without looking back. Chapter 5, 67. Qingshan, you've changed a lot. In the dark room, Han Qiongji's hand caressed Li Qingshan's face. Unknowingly, the flamboyant youngster from before had completely turned into a man. The edges of his face became more defined, and his gaze was as firm as steel. Just as her father had said, she couldn't see what was hidden in it. Why was he so determined? It was like a mystery. She had a feeling that in the few years they were apart, he had experienced many things, far more than she knew or imagined, to the point that she felt a sense of unfamiliarity, like a statue, although there didn't seem to be any difference on the surface. Only by carefully touching it could one feel that the material was completely different, to the point that every detail was different. Li Qingshan held her hand and said softly, "Chapter 6. The sky is so far away you are the same. You've lost a lot of weight. And also matured a lot." Han Qiongji responded with and leaned weakly in his arms. Li Qingshan hugged her tightly and said in his heart, "Qiongji, I've become very strong. I can protect you." On this road to the 9 heavens, he might have to give up a lot, but he wasn't willing to give up on the person in his arms. He remembered a line from a movie from his previous life, who said that a man can't travel the world with his wife. The room was silent as they listened to the snow falling outside the window. That night, the two of them laid down in their clothes and listened in silence. Li Qingshan didn't have any desire in his heart, but he felt very peaceful. At this moment, the bloodthirsty north moon seemed to be far away from him. The long-lost human heart returned to his chest, emitting waves of warmth. When the sun was about to rise, Han Qiongji hesitated and said softly, "Qingshan, are you hiding something from me?" Li Qingshan put his hand on her shoulder and distanced himself from her. He looked into her eyes and gently nodded, and under his gaze, Han Qiongji felt suffocated and a faint sense of fear. Li Qingshan took a deep breath and decided not to hide it anymore. At this moment, he couldn't say anything to deceive her. Even if she couldn't accept it and ran out to spread this secret, he was willing to accept the result. Just as he was about to open his mouth, a hand pressed against Li Qingshan's lips. He was slightly startled, only to hear Han Qiongji say, "I'm a little scared." She felt that if she heard this secret, it would break the peace and quiet between them. Li Qingshan did not know what to do. Han Qiongji said, "I don't want to hear it anymore. You must have your reasons for not telling me. Let me know when you think it's the right time. Okay?" Li Qingshan hesitated for a moment. Okay. Her mind had not yet recovered from the grief of losing her uncle. If such a thing was given to her now, it would probably be more than she could bear, and it would be difficult for her to accept it. In the following days, Li Qingshan and Han Qiongji often walked on the snow and roamed the nearby forest. But unlike before, most of the time, it was Li Qingshan who did the talking. He talked about what happened after they parted. He didn't want to hide it anymore, so he didn't lie to cover it up, and there were many white spaces in his words. Most of the time, Han Qiongji listened quietly, occasionally asking a few questions, but never asking questions, as if she was afraid of bursting a beautiful bubble. This made Li Qingshan feel even more pity for her. At other times, Li Qingshan often practiced martial arts with the Han clan's disciples in an open space outside the cemetery. Keeping vigil wasn't about being cooped up in the room and sighing. The militarists didn't pay much attention to these superficial courtesies, so they gradually didn't take Li Qingshan's lack of manners to heart and humbly asked him for advice. After all, the difficulty of the two was on completely different levels. It was worlds apart for Li Qingshan as well. How fast? Han Tie could not help but sigh. If Li Qingshan said he was close, then he really was close. The minor realms of cultivation for cultivators were not as difficult to break through as major realms, but they still required a considerable amount of time and effort. Every single step forward was extremely difficult. As long as Qi practitioners had the guidance of a master, the support of sufficient resources, and their own talent was passable, they could basically all reach foundation establishment. It could be regarded as the simplest first step in the path of cultivation. Of course, it was not actually that simple. Just the word resources had stumped many cultivators. The true spirit pill that was crucial to breaking through to foundation establishment was not something every Qi practitioner could possess. If they tried to break through with their own strength, it would be far too difficult. Only after reaching foundation establishment could they be considered to have reached a higher level and formally begun cultivating. The trials of the path of cultivation would only begin then. Even with the support of sufficient resources, it would still be riddled with difficulties. Otherwise, large, resourceful sects, like the Sword Collection Palace, and Umbraline sect would not have so few golden core elders. And the second heavenly tribulation would not be as gentle as the first one. If he relied solely on external forces, there was a high chance that he would die to the heavenly tribulation. Han Anjuan was only at early foundation establishment right now. He was only close to breaking through to mid-foundation establishment. His talent was already quite impressive. With the support of his clan, he had advanced valiantly, and he had basically given up on all forms of entertainment. How could he not sigh in admiration at Li Qingshan's cultivation speed? However, in the 100 schools of thought, there was also a person who struggled and crawled through the doorway to the path of cultivation. In the secluded dwelling below Contention Island, the rumbling of thunder ceased. A charred figure writhed and struggled to her feet. At first, she coughed violently, followed by a soft chuckle from the depths of her throat. Gradually, it grew louder and louder, turning into a hysterical, wild laughter like a snake raising its head. A simple, vigorous vine crawled out from Qian Rongji's body, wrapping around her. The charred skin on her body peeled off layer by layer. It was impossible to tell whether it was her clothes or her charred skin. It was like a black snake shedding its skin. Snow-white skin grew out, and a beautiful, tiny snake slithered happily on it. Afterwards came a new round of torture. Even at a time like this, no matter when, the pain would never disappear. It would only become more and more intense than ever before. She collapsed on the ground again, her limbs twisted inch by inch, like tiny insects being roasted by fire. It seemed strange and disgusting, but the more intense the pain, the more resplendent her smile became. Even the tortures of hell were unable to distort the joy from the bottom of her heart. When everything settled down, she laid on the ground and raised her arm high into the air, pointing at the stone wall above. The heaven-climbing vine extended up along her arm, and the hell snake coiled around it again, hissing and flicking its tongue. Hee, the heavens are so far away. Commander, I've come to collect a cultivation method of a higher level for the School of Legalism. Hua Qingzan currently sat by the window, handling the matters of the School of Legalism. Qian Rongji pushed open the door and entered, bowing. She had changed into a new set of clothes, and her usual smile was even warmer now. Rongji, congratulations on reaching foundation establishment. Hua Qingzan was mildly surprised before congratulating her, with a smile. However, he was surprised inside. Qian Rongji was in high spirits, and her bearing had changed drastically. The sinister feeling vanished, actually giving off a strange charm that took his breath away. However, he was not tempted at all. Instead, he sighed inside. She's finally become something even more vicious. Qian Rongji said, "It's all thanks to Commander's nurturing." After a simple conversation, Hua Qingzan passed the new cultivation method to Qian Rongji. He went through the motions and said, "The power of the Hell Realm is powerful, but it's also dangerous. You have to be as careful as possible when you sense and use it. The slightest carelessness can lead to great pain. Many disciples of legalism have committed suicide because they lost their minds during cultivation. Thank you for your advice, Commander. I will be careful," Qian Rongji said modestly. "Have you chosen the hell you want to sense?" Hua Qingzan could not help but ask when Qian Rongji bid farewell, and left. Chapter 568. The Waterside Pavilion of Listening Wind. I hope I can reach Golden Core before the age of 30. Li Qingshan gazed at the sky. The snow had just cleared up, and the sky was blue. 30 years old. Han Tie raised an eyebrow. Although he said, "Hope," his expression was filled with confidence. He did not seem like he was spouting nonsense. Instead, he was announcing a simple fact, and he did not feel like it was anything special. The Golden Core cultivators who had died to Li Qingshan's hands had already accumulated a number, so he did not take it too seriously. His current target was the highest of the 9 provinces, the realm of kings, so he could not help but reveal his arrogance. The other disciples of the Han family gasped in surprise. Even though they weren't people who fawned on the rich and powerful, they were still able to see through him. Even though they were not people who fawned on those in power in the cultivation community, the strong always deserved respect. Han Anjuan could not help but study Li Qingshan deeply when he heard that a 30-year-old Golden Core cultivator was rare even across the 9 provinces. By then, he would definitely make a name for himself through the world. When he first met him, he already knew he was anything but mediocre, but he never thought he would one day actually mention the words golden core so easily. To be able to so easily mention the word golden core, that was a goal that even he could not reach. In consideration of the Han family, having a son-in-law like him was truly a blessing. After Han Angua died in battle, the heavy responsibility of being the patriarch fell on Han Anjuin's shoulders. He felt unprecedentedly heavy pressure. If the golden core cultivators of the Rui commandery had not died in battle, and the positions of the Marquis of Rui and Great General remained undecided, many of the resources that the Han family possessed would have been carved up a long time ago. A clan that only had a foundation establishment cultivator was only a small clan, but a single talented prodigy could change everything. If Li Qingshan could use this talent to defeat a powerful master, the Han family would be able to weather this storm safely. Perhaps not only would they not suffer any losses, but they would even benefit from it. Soon, the heavy snow began to fill the air. Amidst the whispers of the wind, as the wind moaned, the descendants of the Han family removed their mourning clothes before the mausoleum. Li Qingshan patted Han Qiongji's shoulder. Han Qiongji looked back and smiled. Her eyes reddened as she leaned against his shoulder gently. Right at this moment, her heart stirred, and she suddenly turned around. Amidst the snowstorm, a figure walked over. Her footsteps were light, as if she was floating in the air. Her wide sleeves and long hair fluttered in the wind. Before anyone could see her clearly, they already felt that she was a peerless beauty. She squinted her eyes, her gaze piercing through the snow, and a look of amazement flashed past her eyes. That face was even more beautiful than she had imagined. The so-called beauty that could topple a nation was nothing more than this. No, it wasn't just the face. The newcomer was dressed in plain clothes, with blue silk wrapped around her waist. Her figure was slender, and her jet-black hair, that reached her knees, fluttered in the wind. A pair of bare feet stepped on the crystal-clear snow, resolutely striding forward. Even if there was a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood, it would not be able to make this footstep waver. His eyes were like a deep pool, without ripples, as he stared blankly ahead. It was as if he could see everything in the world. Compared to the simple titles of beauty and beauty, she had an indescribable charm about her that made people overlook her gender. Who was she? Why did she come? Little, and you're here. Li Qingshan turned back and smiled, a look of astonishment flashing past his eyes. Originally, Little and had no concept of clothing. It was just a layer of clothing to cover up the body. Although the current her was dressed very simply, it gave people the feeling that this was the best outfit, exuding an unprecedented beauty. It seemed like it was the aftereffects of the memory recovery. However, everyone loved beauty, and this was not a bad thing. Little and Han Qiongji cried out involuntarily. How could she associate the person in front of her with that wooden child? Although he had mentioned the changes in Little, and it was still far beyond her imagination. Not far away, the disciples of the Han clan stared straight at them. Regardless of whether they were men or women, they could not take their eyes off of them. Little and arrived beside Li Qingshan and silently grabbed Li Qingshan's hand. Although he remained expressionless, his blank eyes lit up in that instant, as if he could express everything in 1,000 words. Han Qiongji felt like she was being ignored. Afterwards, she discovered that she was not just being ignored. Instead, she was ignoring everyone, or even the entire world. Only he existed. All right, it's time to go. Li Qingshan seemed to understand everything. He nodded with a smile and rubbed her head naturally. She lowered her head slightly, and her red lips curled into a smile. The snow and ice melted away. "Where are you going?" Han Qiongji asked, breaking through this feeling of being cut off. "Oh, I told you before. Didn't the Annihilum Light Chan master specially come once?" Li Qingshan explained. Little N's path of white bone and great beauty had reached a bottleneck. The Chan Monastery of Devanaga was the perfect opportunity, as well as fulfilling his promise to the Golden Cicada. "You're leaving right now?" Han Qiongji asked in surprise, but she let out a sigh of relief inside for some reason. Disciples of a Buddhist sect, like the Chan Monastery of Devanaga, clearly could not have thoughts of love, or she really would have no idea what she would do. "Yeah, don't worry. I'll return as soon as possible." Li Qingshan hugged Han Qiongji and spoke about parting again. Seeing how reluctant she was to part with him, his heart skipped a beat. He said to Han Anjuan loudly, "General Han, once Qiongji's 3 years of mourning are over, I'll come to the Han family to ask for her hand in marriage and complete our engagement." Han Anjuan was speechless. Things were different now. The present was different from the past. No matter how he looked at it, he could not turn it down again. "Qingshan." Han Qiongji's eyes immediately welled up with tears. She turned her head away and wiped them away with her arm. She smiled. "All right, come back soon. Be careful on your journey." Li Qingshan waved his hand, and a cloud rose up beneath his feet. He vanished into the wind and snow with little and. Before making his way to the Chan Monastery of Devanaga, Li Qingshan still had to see someone, which was Gu Yenying. He was still a Scarlet Hawk commander after all. It was fine if he slacked off normally. However, without this superior's permission, he could not leave his post without permission. And he had something else he wanted to ask her for help with. The white cloud landed outside the Rui Commandery in front of a steep, towering mountain. The steps led straight up. Li Qingshan raised his head and gazed up. At the top of the mountain, the silver hawk unfurled its wings as if it was clashing with the wind and snow. Li Qingshan made little and wait below as he made his way up the mountain alone. As soon as he touched the formation, he heard a bellow, "Who goes there?" The steps before him twisted, and a man in white emerged out of nowhere. Li Qingshan clasped his hands. "I'm the Scarlet Hawk commander of the Clear River Prefecture, Li Qingshan, and I've come to see Commander Gu." "So you're Li Qingshan. Commander Gu has told me that if you come, you can go find her in the waterside pavilion of Listening Wind." The white wolf guard who watched over the mountains studied Li Qingshan curiously. The waterside pavilion of Listening Wind was where Commander Gu cultivated and rarely received guests. He rarely received guests. So why was he so fond of Li Qingshan? The waterside pavilion of Listening Wind. The wind and snow vanished before his eyes. The sky was a clear blue. On the rippling lake, green lotus leaves stretched endlessly. Pink-white lotus flowers bloomed among the green leaves. With a gust of warm wind, the lotus leaves rose and fell, giving off waves of fragrance. It was like the height of summer. the dense spiritual qi, the fragrance of the flowers, and the warm wind merged together. It was more than 10 times better than the 100 schools of thought of the Clear River Prefecture. Sucking in a deep breath gave him a feeling of relaxation and rejuvenation. And from the outside, the lake could only be regarded as a small lake at most. However, when he stepped into the formation, he discovered that the lakeside was extremely large, basically no smaller than Mooncourt Lake. It stretched as far as the eye could see. It truly could be described as a place of boundless green lotus leaves. The lotus leaves and lotus flowers bloomed endlessly out of season and against all common sense, giving off an unexpectedly resplendent feeling. The formation that envelopes this place is anything but trivial. It can actually distort space. Probably even King won't be able to get through it so easily. Li Qingshan thought to himself as he flew over the surface of the lake. He heard the pleasant tinkle of a bell and flew in that direction. Very soon, he saw a delicate pavilion surrounded by lotus leaves and lotus flowers. Wind chimes hung from the eaves. Compared to the enormous lake, the waterside pavilion was unexpectedly small. Gu Yening walked out, her hair draped down to her waist, swaying gently in the warm wind. A smile appeared on her face, too, making her seem slightly less valiant. She unexpectedly felt like she was at home. A rattan table and a few rattan chairs were placed on the balcony overlooking the lake. Li Qingshan did not hold back. He pulled out a chair and sat down. Gu Yening picked up a teacup and personally poured a cup of tea, pushing it before him. Li Qingshan stared at the tea before him and asked in thought, if Li Qingshan were just Li Qingshan, would he receive such treatment? When has Li Qingshan not been Li Qingshan? It's just a cup of tea, Gu Yening said with a smile and sat down before him. Li Qingshan could not help but think about how she had invited him to a cup of tea back then outside Qingyang City. Back then, he had yet to understand just how great the difference between them was. In comparison, her attitude towards him had not changed in any fundamental way. To her, it was just a cup of alcohol. She remained as composed as before, but his own thoughts had fluctuated far too much. He downed the tea and got back to business. I've come this time to ask for your resignation, Commander, so that I can send Little N to the Chan Monastery of Devanaga. No problem. There's something else I'd like to ask for the Commander's help with. Please pass this Origin Spirit Pill to General Han Anjuan for me, Commander. Li Qingshan planned inside. Han Anjuan was that late Foundation establishment. If he could obtain an Origin Spirit Pill, his chances at reaching Golden Core would definitely increase by quite a lot. It would make up for his regret of not being able to save Han Angua in the past. However, he was unable to explain the origins of this Origin Spirit Pill at all. Its value could not be compared to true spirit pills. Gu Yening said, it's just a small matter, but you should still give it to him. Just say it's a gift from me to you. It's quite a generous gift. Let alone marrying off your daughter. You can even sell your daughter. With that, the issue of the origins of the Origin Spirit Pill that troubled Li Qingshan the most would be resolved. He was obviously willing to receive this favor, so that when he confessed everything to Han Qiongji in the future, it would definitely add some points to his reputation. Gu Yening said, if you run into any trouble in the future, feel free to come find me. My identity can still be of some use. This, Li Qingshan raised an eyebrow. That sure was great kindness. Actually, there are some matters I'd like to ask for your help with. Li Qingshan probably won't be able to receive treatment like this. Gu Yening stood up and paced around, looking back with a smile. You can just ask for it, Commander. Sure enough, there was no such thing as a free lunch in the world, but Li Qingshan instead preferred this kind of equality and mutual benefit. I'm just a tiny tadpole, so I better do my best to jump upwards. Don't look down on me just because of this bird woman. Although riding the clouds was nowhere near as fast as flying in his original form, it was still extremely fast. He arrived at the edge of the Rui Commandery very soon. He shot past it without stopping at all, as if he had broken through an invisible barrier and stepped into an even greater land. The Chan Monastery of Devanaga was thousands of kilometers away, but Li Qingshan was in no hurry. When he encountered particularly moving scenery, he would stop and have a look, witnessing the beautiful scenery of the various places. Apart from little N's different behavior from before, there were no disturbances along the way. It took him 2 days of time. Suddenly, a tall, imposing mountain appeared on the horizon. Along the way, Li Qingshan had seen many famous mountains and great rivers, but none of them could match the atmosphere of this mountain. Although it was not particularly tall, it stood on the ground like a crouching tiger, possessing its own dignified bearing. Buddhist pagodas stood in great numbers on the mountain. Large halls stretched on into the distance, and the sound of chanting rang out. "We're here. This is the Chan Monastery of Devanaga." Li Qingshan stowed the mental map of the Green Province away and descended from the cloud in the distance. Regardless of the sect, none of them liked cultivators flying over their heads. Li Qingshan was confident in his strength, but he was not confident enough to provoke a large Buddhist sect. At this moment, the sun rose up from the east, gilding the entire mountain. Li Qingshan's eyes lit up. Looking up, the silhouette of the mountain seemed like a seated Buddha. The ethereal chanting was like a Buddha chanting softly, awakening the infatuation of people. Under the illumination of the sun, the golden hall at the top of the mountain shone, with rings of golden light. It seemed like the halo behind the Buddha's head, adding to its dignified and holy bearing. It was enough to make people want to prostrate and worship it. He understood why the mountain was called Great Buddha Mountain. Li Qingshan sucked in a deep breath and returned to normal. Then he looked at little Anne, who stared at the great fire. The samadhi flames of white bone blazed in the depths of his eyes. "Are you ready?" Li Qingshan rubbed little Anne's head, and little Anne nodded. The two of them slowed down, passing through the dense forest and arriving on the mountain path. Perhaps this could no longer be called a mountain path. It was 300 meters wide, rising and falling like a dragon through the mountains, extending towards the Chan Monastery of Devanaga. If this were not a world of cultivators, constructing a path like this would be extremely difficult even with the modern technology of his past life. Even more startling was the number of pedestrians on the path. The closer they got to the Chan Monastery of Devanaga, the denser they became. With a single glance, Li Qingshan saw over 100,000 people. Clearly, there were other paths like this in the other directions of Great Buddha Mountain. Countless men, women, old, and young bowed, with each step making their way towards Great Buddha Mountain. Even the gray-haired old woman was no exception. Every time she prostrated herself on the ground, Li Qingshan would worry about whether she could climb back up again. Beside her was a child, probably her grandson. He still seemed rather ignorant, but he also brought his palms together like the old woman, bowing with each step. There was no conversation between them. They were silent and solemn, yet they were also as harmonious as brothers and sisters. The sunlight shone on their faces, pious and firm, radiating with a glow of happiness and peace. That was the light of faith from a determined mind. Even non-believers would be infected by such a scene. Li Qingshan also brought his palms together and bowed towards Great Buddha Mountain in the distance. As a transmigrator, he did not believe in anything, but he respected the faith of others. The lives of mortals were filled with pain. Not everyone had the opportunity to become a cultivator and attempt to break free from the shackles of fate. Having a faith like This was not necessarily a bad thing. People always needed some consolation. Non-believers would always underestimate the word faith. However, getting drunk and partying, becoming addicted to the internet, eating, drinking, and gambling were not necessarily any smarter than bowing to a Buddha statue. Not to mention that Buddhas actually existed in this world. They were experts who possessed great wisdom and strength. The world of Pure Land and the Hell Realm also existed. Accumulating virtue, doing good, and being reborn in the world of Pure Land were all real. Reaching there, Li Qingshan gained an even clearer understanding of what the word Buddha meant here. It was an unimaginably powerful existence. Then he glanced at Great Buddha Mountain in the distance and said to Little, and with his soul sense, if he doesn't provoke us, there's no need for us to oppose him. Chapter 570. Li Qingshan warned Little and again. The two of them made their way up the mountain path together. They obviously did not bow, with every step like mortals. They passed by everyone quickly and arrived below Great Buddha Mountain in the blink of an eye, right before the entrance of the Chan Monastery of Devanaga. They were unable to advance any further here. Two protector generals that stood 30 meters tall stood on the left and right of the entrance. They held their chests and bellies, each wielding a weapon. At first glance, they even seemed like two statues. But suddenly, their eyes swiveled and landed on Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan's breathing halted slightly. It really is the Chan Monastery of Devanaga after all. Just the two protector generals at the entrance can actually make me feel threatened. Looking back, there were thousands of houses built at the foot of the mountain. There were regular monks who specially guided believers into the houses, arranging their meals, and even distributing silver. Unlike the temples of his past life, a sect like the Chan Monastery of Devanaga did not need the money of mortals, nor did they rely on invading land to survive. They only needed mortals to offer up their faith. Over thousands of years, just how terrifying of a force would they become? Who is below the steps? Why aren't you bowing? A receptionist, monk asked loudly from the high walls that resembled city walls. He was no longer a regular monk. Instead, he was a Chi practitioner, a true disciple of the Chan Monastery of Devanaga. Several tens of thousands of people worshipped on the square at the foot of the mountain, so Li Qingshan and the young man's figures stood out particularly. In particular, everyone who saw Little and along the way was stunned. The young man even forgot to kowtow and looked straight at her. The receptionist monk saw Little and could not help but be taken aback. Afterwards, he lowered his head in a hurry and chanted, Amitabha. Li Qingshan said, "We're not believers. We've come to see the Annihilum Light Chan Master." Junior Uncle Annihilum Light is in secluded cultivation. He doesn't receive visitors, so you better return. Before the receptionist monk had even finished speaking, a streak of golden light suddenly rose up from a majestic hall on Great Buddha Mountain, landing at the entrance and turning into an old monk. He was the Annihilum Light Chan Master himself, gazing at Little and in delight. You're finally here. Junior Uncle Annihilum Light. The reception monk was surprised and bowed in a hurry. The Annihilum Light Chan Master often occupied the position of head monk in the Bodhi courtyard. He was indifferent and liked peace and quiet. Even if he was a direct disciple, it was extremely rare to see such a change in expression. Today, he had personally come out to welcome two insignificant foundation establishment cultivators, and he even revealed such an expression. It was truly rare. Little and put his palms together and bowed. "Master!" "Follow me." The Annihilum Light Chan Master waved his hand, and the huge entrance behind him opened loudly. Sunlight passed through, landing on Li Qingshan's face. He squinted his eyes slightly. "The door is open." The door is open. Calls rang out from below the mountain. The main entrance of the Chan monastery of Devanaga was not usually open. The disciples of the monastery also entered and exited through a small door below. Only when the main entrance was open like this would they be welcoming esteemed guests. The Anilam Light Chan master glanced at Little and before waving his hand. A melodious bell rang out from the top of the mountain. At first it was just one, followed by 100 bells ringing across the entire mountain, drowning out the chanting and ringing through the entire mountain. The receptionist monk was dumbfounded as well. He studied Li Qingshan and Little and let alone 2 foundation establishment cultivators. Even 2 golden core cultivators did not have the right to receive such treatment. This woman seemed to be the final disciple of his senior uncle Anilam Light, but she was only a disciple, so she was even less qualified. Golden light shone brightly as the bell chimed together. It was a grand sight. Li Qingshan eased up slightly. As it seemed, the Anilam Light Chan master still valued Little and very much. That way, she would not be bullied. Actually, this was just him worrying for nothing. With Little N's current strength, just how many people could bully her across the entire 9 provinces? The Anilam Light Chan master walked at the front, and Little N followed closely behind. Li Qingshan followed as well. The Anilam Light Chan master glanced back at him, and Li Qingshan smiled. The Anilam Light Chan master said nothing more. Little N welcomed the light and stepped into the Chan monastery of Devanaga. Her seaweed-like hair and her plain clothes were all coated with a layer of golden light. The entire mountain was alarmed. The various head monks emerged from their doors and gazed at the entrance in the distance. Among the head monks, the Anilam Light Chan master had always kept a low profile, indifferent to the affairs of the world. Yet today, he had done something so high profile, which truly surprised many people. He represented the entire Chan monastery of Devanaga, expressing his politeness and respect towards a new disciple, as well as expressing how much the entire monastery valued her. He told everyone, including the abbot of the monastery, not to underestimate her. But was she worthy of him? The towering pagodas were like a forest, blocking out the sunlight and radiating with faint, golden light. They possessed a wondrous power. This power was not powerful, but it was like sunlight and rain, nourishing everything silently. It was filled with warmth and benevolence, enough to make people submit. There were the Sariras of past eminent monks. Sariras were equivalent to the golden cores of regular cultivators. They could only be condensed after undergoing the second heavenly tribulation. Just from the endless forest of pagodas, it was possible to sense just how much the Chan monastery of Devanaga had accumulated. From afar, it did not seem like it, but he could sense the dignified feeling when he was there. The pagodas were all over 30 meters tall, and many of them were even taller than Li Qingshan's original demon body. Li Qingshan thought, these pagodas probably aren't just for commemoration. Instead, they've become one with the entire mountain. They're probably some kind of defensive formation. Little and did not look around. It was as if he was not walking through the forest of pagodas, being watched by thousands of gazes. Instead, he was walking through an empty forest alone. The Anilam Light Chan master smiled. Chapter 5:71. The sudden change was like a clap of thunder. No one could respond in time. The disciples outside the hall were left dumbfounded with their eyes and mouths agape. The head monks were also shocked. They had no idea why the abbot had flown into such a thunderous rage. The dauntless monk's full-powered strike was like a god splitting open a mountain. No one could stop it. Has he been observing silently the entire time, and realized that little and practices the path of white bone and great beauty, which is why he suddenly attacked. Li Qingshan charged towards the grand hall, but it was already too late. Boom! Waves of air surged over, surging through the grand hall and producing a hollow whistle. It sent Li Qingshan flying. Little and Li Qingshan was utterly furious. The dauntless monk's strike was so powerful that it could even shatter a mountain. Little N's path of white bone and great beauty was powerful, but his cultivation was still weak after all. How was he supposed to block it? Furious, he was about to throw all caution to the wind and transform into his original body, deciding life and death with the dauntless monk. Don't! Suddenly, a voice rang out in his head. It was Little Anne's voice. Li Qingshan immediately calmed down. Even if the dauntless monk had really seen through something, he would never launch a sudden attack like this with his bearing. He could at least explain everything first before subduing the demon. It was not like even 10 Little and Li Qingshan were useless against a monk king like that in the Chan monastery of Devanaga anyway. Just now, Li Qingshan had only panicked out of concern. As soon as he calmed down, he noticed something amiss. The violent wind subsided, and the colossal pestle that resembled a heavenly pillar stopped above Little Anne's head. The murderous aura in the air vanished, like the thunderstorm had cleared up the sky in a single instant. It was rather abrupt. It only demonstrated that the dauntless monk's control over his power had already reached a level where he was absolutely unruffled, which also proved that he had not unleashed his full power. Little and sat on the praying mat, still expressionless. His seaweed-like long hair fluttered in the wind, and his body didn't even lean back in the slightest. His eyes were empty as he stared ahead, ignoring the huge Vajra. As the saying goes, even if Mount Tai collapses in front of you, you won't change your expression. Aren't you afraid that I'll kill you? The 100-meter-tall guardian king stared at Little Anne. The anger on its face gradually subsided. His lips opened and closed, emitting a sonorous sound that reverberated in the hall of great strength. If you want to kill me, I can't stop you. It's useless to be afraid. If you don't want to kill me, why should I be afraid? Little Anne said calmly, great wisdom begets great courage. It's rare. My fearless Vajra Sutra can only be cultivated by those with great courage. Are you willing to learn it? The dauntless monk asked. However, his true objective with his strike just now was not to test whether Little Anne had great courage or whether he had the right to teach her the fearless Vajra Sutra. The talent and ability to comprehend that Little Anne had demonstrated was basically unbelievably high. Even when he was young, he was left in the dust. As a matter of fact, she might have been the most outstanding disciple the monastery had ever seen since its founding. However, there was something that even he could not see through in her empty eyes, which made him feel a hint of wariness. She seemed completely empty. He was unable to tell what she wanted, much less tell what she was thinking. If a figure like her devoted herself to Buddhism, she would definitely be an eminent monk of Buddhism. However, if she harbored demonic thoughts, the consequences would be so great that no one could stop her. As a result, he tested her. In a quiet valley, a simple stone door was constructed from stone pillars covered in moss. It was huge and majestic, but it had almost collapsed. In front of the stone door, a fat monk lay on a large gray rock, sleeping away. His snoring was thunderous, and his bare belly rose and fell like a small mountain. He gave off a heavy smell of alcohol, and he even held a leg of lamb in his hand. However, Li Qingshan dared not be careless at all. Although the alcohol and meat monk did not give off any aura at all, he knew his strength was no weaker than the dauntless monk through the senses of the spirit turtle. The fat monk opened one eye and glanced over. Annihilum Light, why have you brought them here? Under the abbot's orders, Senior Uncle Unraging has sent them into the demon suppression hall to reflect on their mistakes. The unraging monk leapt to his feet and asked with a chuckle, "What have you done wrong?" Only then did Li Qingshan see the 3 words Demon Suppression Hall engraved on the huge rock. He lay on. "Your abbot wants me to become a monk, but I refuse." Ha 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 ha. Interesting, interesting. If I had a beautiful woman like her, I'd never become a monk either. Senior brother, why are you forcing me like this? The unraging monk glanced at Little and patted his belly, laughing so hard that his fat jiggled. His laughter was extremely infectious. Li Qingshan could not help but smile too. The Chan Monastery of Devanaga really should let you become the abbot master. The unraging monk shook his head like a rattle drum. What's so interesting about that? This girl seems like a disciple of Buddhism. The Annihilum Light Chan master gave a rough explanation of what had happened, and the unraging monk studied the 2 of them in thought. His smile remained on his face the entire time as he muttered to himself, "You're not born with good karma, only fond of murder and arson. You sure do have some courage to say that before my senior brother. Why don't you become my disciple instead? That way, you can save yourself a trip to the demon suppression hall. Apart from women, alcohol and meat aren't too taboo here. What's that saying again? Buddha passes through the intestines, but alcohol and meat remain in the heart. Senior uncle, you've got it backwards," the Annihilum Light Chan master reminded. A sliver of surprise appeared on his withered face. The unraging monk was a great Buddhist cultivator who had undergone the 3rd heavenly tribulation. His status in the monastery was extremely great, far greater than the various head monks. However, he was eccentric and did not abide by the precepts, so he was punished to guard the demon suppression hall all year round. Originally, with his cultivation, no one could stop him even if he wanted to leave the monastery, but he really did remain in the demon suppression hall, guarding it for a century. He found it troublesome, and he had never taken on a disciple before. He never thought he would actually ask to take on a disciple today. This was basically a colossal fortuitous encounter. If he had a master like that, he might not be able to do whatever he wanted in the 9 provinces, but anyone who wanted to touch Li Qingshan would have to consider the consequences. It's all the same. As the unraging monk said that, he fished out a great gourd of alcohol and gulped down a few mouthfuls before passing it to Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan smelled the fragrance of the alcohol and tried taking a sip. He felt like a scorching flame had spread from his throat to his stomach, burning with pain, but also indescribably refreshing. He had actually never tasted such strong alcohol in his life, and it contained extremely dense spiritual qi. Li Qingshan could not help but take a deep breath, but the alcohol in the gourd flowed endlessly. He drank over a dozen liters in a single gulp, but he still did not finish it. Fine alcohol, but I don't want to be a monk. Li Qingshan drank 50 liters of alcohol before putting down the gourd and wiping his mouth. He was hiding a great secret. Although even great cultivators of the 3rd heavenly tribulation could not see through it with the divine strength of the spirit turtle, it was difficult to be certain that he would not discover it once they spent some time together. By then, master and disciple would become enemies. "You damned brat! You're only telling me after drinking. Then forget it. You better pay a visit to the demon suppression hall." The unraging monk had only done this on a whim. He did not mind Li Qingshan's refusal, so he pointed. The stone door opened with a loud bang, revealing a pitch-black cave that emitted a gloomy, cold air. Looking into the cave, it was so deep that the bottom could not be seen. It felt a little like the gate of hungry ghosts, as if it led to another world. The unraging monk swung his hand, and a tremendous, gentle power surged over from behind. Li Qingshan flew into the cave involuntarily, and little N was no different. In the air, the two of them clasped hands and dove into the demon suppression hall. Don't go too deep or too far. The unraging monk's voice rang out from behind, growing further and further away as if it came from thousands of kilometers away. The stone door slammed shut loudly. The sound stopped and the light vanished. Senior brother, aren't you afraid that this once-in-a-thousand-years genius will run into some danger in the demon suppression hall? The unraging monk yawned and turned around. Before he knew it, the dauntless monk had already stood beside the rock with his hands behind his back. As long as she doesn't venture too deep into the demon suppression hall, what danger will she run into? If she died so easily, she wouldn't be a genius. I want to test her temperament again. The dauntless monk replied. Although the test was fruitless, the sliver of uneasiness in his heart was unable to be dispelled. Just now, Little N's behavior had allowed him to discover a breakthrough point, which was Li Qingshan. Chapter 573. The influence of a supreme prodigy, that was far too great. Once they decided to support her towards the apex of the cultivation community, they would be the only ones left to taste the bitter consequences. Several thousand years ago, the Chan monastery of Devanaga had once produced a Buddhist prodigy that could be described as supreme, but in the end, the Chan monastery of Devanaga suffered heavy losses, almost falling into decline. With this as an example, how could the dauntless monk afford the slightest carelessness? He asked the unraging monk again, "And why do you want to accept this kid as your disciple?" "I just find him pleasing to the eye." The unraging monk chuckled. He could sense something special from Li Qingshan. Just when the dauntless monk was about to ask further, the unraging monk said, "Look, they've already arrived." It was as if they had been sucked into a black swirl, all the way to the bottom, passing through and entering another world. Li Qingshan and Little N stood hand in hand and looked around. They had already arrived in a splendid room. The floor was paved with golden bricks, and the walls were covered in golden foil, detailed with graceful patterns. It was like an imperial palace, forming a sharp contrast with the dilapidated stone door of the demon suppression hall. However, when Li Qingshan studied the surroundings carefully, he discovered this was not an imperial palace, but a prison. The room they were in was a cage. Before them was a row of glistening golden bars sealing off the path out. On the other side of the bars was a similar room. Li Qingshan went up and gave it a gentle push. With a crack, the cell door opened. They arrived in a wide passageway, which was also splendid. However, on the two sides of the passageway were cages of various sizes. Li Qingshan asked in confusion, "Why is the demon suppression hall built like a prison?" When the demon suppression hall was first established, it did indeed serve the purpose of a prison. The monks of the Chan monastery of Devanaga captured and subdued demonic cultivators, throwing them into the demon suppression hall to watch over them,
flowed out
and
from
give them an
between
opportunity
them,
to turn
dyeing the
over
golden
a new
tiles
leaf.
red.
However,
A
during
child
the
around
millennia
7,
since the founding
8
of
years
Great
old
Xia,
in the middle,
the world
had
had
been
been
disembowered.
The
They were
demonic
currently
cultivators
taking
had
out his
retired,
organs
and the
shoving
conflict
them
between
into their
righteousness
mouths.
and
The
evil
child
no
was still
longer
not
existed.
dead.
He
Even if there were
struggled as hard as
cultivators
he
who
could,
committed crimes,
screaming out
the
in
Hawkwolf
pain
Guard
and
would
hatred.
kill and capture
Stop.
them.
Li
It was
Qingshan
not the
bellowed,
Chan
and the
monastery
group
of
of people
Devanagas
turned around
to take
They were
action.
all covered in blood.
As a result,
and their
the
faces
cultivators
were
of the
twisted.
demonic Tao
It
who
was
were
just like
suppressed
a
at that
classic
time
scene
either
from
put
a
down their
zombie
butcher
movie
knives
in his past
and converted to Buddhism
However,
or died of
to Li
old age in
Qingshan's
there.
surprise,
The original
they did not
purpose
lunge
of the
over
demon
immediately.
suppression hall
The
gradually
bulliest
fell
man
into disuse,
even wiped away the blood
but
on
a
his
new
face
purpose
and
was born.
asked, It
"Are
became
you
a
new?"
training ground for disciples.
His tone was rather strange.
The truly
but he was
great
clearly
sex
intelligent,
always maintained
not a mad
vigilance
beast.
at all times.
However,
They
he did not
understood
feel
the
like
nature
there was
of
anything
fighting
wrong
and
with
killing
what he
in the
was doing at
cultivation
all.
world.
The
And
child
they would
was
never
still
be
shrieking.
corrupted by the
It was an
illusion of
extremely
peace in the
strange
world.
sight.
They would
Release
sharpen
him.
their blades at all
Li
times,
Qingshan was taken
preparing
aback.
to face the
He
fighting
called out
and killing.
coldly,
If
He
they had
never
only
thought such a
relied on
horrible thing
scriptures,
would
Buddhist
happen in the
Dharma
renowned
and
Chan
benevolence,
monastery
the
of Devanaga.
monastery would have been
These
destroyed
monks were
countless
far more
times
vicious
over a
than
long
he had
time ago.
imagined them to
Although
be.
the internal
"You wanna eat
competition
him?"
could maintain
The
a sense
burly
of
man's
competition,
expression changed.
it was far
but
from a
his
real
tone
fight
seemed
to
like
the
he was
death.
talking about a
As a
pig
result,
or a sheep,
whether it was
not
the
a
sword
child.
collection palace
At
or
this
the
moment,
Xianin sect,
little and
they
caught
all
up
built
as well,
similar places.
arriving beside Li Qingshan.
A
The
mournful
burly man's
scream
eyes lit
came
up,
from the end
shining
of the
with
corridor,
undisguised
filled
lust.
with pain.
His
and
lower body
unwillingness.
immediately changed.
His voice reverberated,
and he stood up
in this
without the
dazzling
slightest
prison,
hint of
causing
shame.
people to feel a
The
chill
other
in their
men
hearts.
were the same.
Li Qingshan
They
narrowed
opened their
his
mouths
eyes
and
restrained
drooled.
his
They
aura.
were clearly
He
human,
flew to the end of the
yet
corridor
they suddenly
and was
seemed like
slightly
wild
surprised
beasts
in heat.
All he saw
"Is
was
that
a
woman
group of
yours?
people lying
Give
on
her
the
to me,
ground
or die."
huddled together.
The man pointed at Little and said to Li Qingshan. Before he had even finished speaking, there was a bang, and his head exploded like a watermelon. Blood and brain matter splattered across the golden wall on the side. "Use your head before you speak." Li Qingshan pulled his foot back as he said, "Awu." The other men all lunged over madly. Their veins bulged and their muscles bulged. Their fangs protruded from their mouths as they howled like wild beasts. Pang pung pung pung. A group of headless corpses fell to the ground. Blood flowed freely, broken bones and brain matter splattered everywhere. Li Qingshan found it strange. These people were far stronger than normal humans, but they did not seem like cultivators. They could not even be considered wild beasts. Wild beasts would always hide in the face of danger, but these people seemed to be driven by their own desires. The child no longer screamed. He propped himself up and stretched out his hand to cover his stomach, stuffing the organs and intestines that had been pulled out back into his stomach. His vitality was unbelievably strong. He then pounced on the headless corpses beside him and began to gnaw on them. He was not whipping the corpses for revenge, but simply eating because he was hungry. Li Qingshan felt a sense of absurdity and did not know what to say. After the child had his fill, the wound on his stomach had mostly healed. The child asked shyly, "Thank you for saving me. Can I follow you? What's your name? Who are they? Why?" Li Qingshan paused. "Eat you? I'm Duoj, and this is my father. I don't know anyone else. So why do you want to eat me?" "It's obviously because I'm hungry." The child called Duoj pointed at the first man whose head Li Qingshan had blown up with a kick and said in a serious manner. Afterwards, he waved his arms and promoted himself. "I can help you fight. If you're hungry, you can eat me too. My flesh is very tender." He swiveled his eyes slyly and pointed at the corpses on the ground, including his father's. "These can be eaten for many days." Li Qingshan felt like his brain was lacking. These people were not powerful, but the things they did and the things they said were terrifying. This was the ultimate proof of the evil nature of the people. They were so repulsive that they could not look at them directly. The father led a group of people to eat the child, and the child treated the father as food. If regular people were here, their outlook on life and values would probably be severely impacted. In reality, there were indeed many disciples of the Chan monastery of Devanaga who were unable to endure the tremendous pressure of the mind during the trials of the demon suppression hall, going mad and suffering from chi deviation. Disciples with such weak wills were not worth paying attention to, no matter how talented they were. Don't tell me they're slaughtering and devouring one another just because they're trapped here and have nothing to eat. No, it's not that simple. These people are basically doing these things as a matter of course. They don't feel any remorse from their conscience at all, much less any so-called mental torture. The dauntless monk had been observing the situation in the demon suppression hall the entire time. He discovered that Little N's gaze did not even waver at all the entire time. That was no longer simple coldness or callousness. Instead, it was disregard. It was disregard. Disregard the bloody sight. Disregard the horrific devouring. The dauntless monk was unable to tell whether he should be happy or worried. Everyone wanted their disciple to have a firm will, but to be so firm to such a degree was slightly strange or even terrifying. It had completely exceeded her age. There was only one thing he was certain of. She did not have a so-called heart of benevolence. And Li Qingshan did not hold back at all. Originally, he was considering whether he should remind them that they were not truly human when they appeared before them, but as it seemed, there was no need for that at all. "Duoj, do you know where the exit is?" Li Qingshan asked. Although he knew the dauntless monk would not spare them so easily, he still had to try and find an exit himself. Duoj said he constantly came across people
Once you
along the way,
enter,
and basically all of them were young men. Li Qingshan
As soon
said,
as they saw
"Is
little,
there really nothing
and
special about it?"
they lunged
Duoj
over like bulls in
hesitated.
heat.
Li
They
Qingshan
were
immediately
all
said,
extremely
"Take us
strong,
there,"
moving like the wind.
Duoj dared
They
not
were
turn
roughly
him down.
on par.
He picked up
with
a
iron
corpse
plate
and
corpses.
pointed at the other
Li
corpses.
Qingshan obviously
It's very
slaughtered his
far.
way over
You
without
can eat
holding
along
back.
the way too.
He discovered
was
that
worried
some of the
that
people
Li
clearly
Qingshan
possessed
and
some
the others would
deformities
run
that
out of
were
food
not human
and try
such
to
as the
eat him.
huge lumps on their
Leave
foreheads,
the corpses
their protruding
behind.
backs, their
Let's
disfigured
go.
skin,
Duoj
and their
left
sharp
the corpses
claws
behind,
and teeth,
and
quickly
normally
led the way.
The more
He
obvious the
glanced back
deformities,
reluctantly,
the more powerful
not because
they
of his
were.
father,
Li
but because
Qingshan's
he was
doubts grew
reluctant to
deeper
part with
and
the food.
deeper.
Just
Just who
meat.
were they?
There's
Why
food.
had they become like this?
Soon after they left,
And why were
another
they
group of
trapped
people
in the
entered,
demon suppression
crouching
hall?
on the ground,
The further
and
he
munching
ventured,
away.
the stronger
They
the
ate
enemies
happily.
became. The
Some
prison
of them
was like
even
a
vaguely
maze.
surpassed
The
the level of
paths
corpse
twisted
soldiers,
and turned,
approaching the strength
constantly
of corpse
branching
generals.
off. Its
He could not
surface area
help but
was
recall the
even
unraging
larger
monk's
than
warning.
that of the great Buddha mountain. This was definitely not an ordinary palace built underground.
Chapter 574. The dauntless monk can't stop worrying about me. He wants to observe my temperament and reactions. If I can't satisfy him, he won't let us out so easily. Little N's voice rang out in his head. Li Qingshan continued onwards without batting an eyelid. Then do I need you to demonstrate some kindness? I can't fool him with a disguise. That's fine. However, I can find an opportunity to use some Buddhist techniques to dispel his doubts. All right. Li Qingshan nodded. So far, Little N had yet to fight. Since he was going to use something, he obviously needed a sufficiently powerful opponent. As a result, they continued onwards. Along the way, basically all the people they came across were men. They would rush over madly as soon as they saw Little, but they basically did not come across any women. According to Duoj, women were too weak, so most of them had already been eaten. As for him, he had only been things like helping others, which was already a sign of his father's doting on him. Instead, Li Qingshan was unable to constantly attack us under this reason. Turning around another corner, only be satisfied a man covered in indigo lunged over them with a fierce gust of wind. How did his lunge possessed and startlingly become derogatory terms clearly when they were put together? With the steel plate corpse. Li Qingshan, however, rubbed his head. His target and felt his head ache slightly. Led the way at the front. This was no longer just cried evil, out, but Li Qingshan twisted his right hand and produced a vortex-like suction. It was as if pulling Duoj back. Anyone who did good deeds like lay and the vortex sacrificed themselves for others, turning into a water spout and piercing the man, extremely crushing him to pieces. He vaguely understood the meaning of the demon suppression hall. It had been many years since Li Qingshan fought outside and killed outside. Be extremely vicious, countless evil. However, there were not many times when he had a more supposed to be helping others than in the demon suppression hall. For a just right cause. Now, he was just too powerful. No, a casual strike from him. I can lead the way for corpses and help you fight and rip open if you're hungry. You can even eat me. It was an extremely bloody sight. All within your calculations. The tanned, it's definitely Duoj, not supposed to be helping 7 or 8 years. It's very clever and very every time this happened. A demon among every time this happened, great evil. They would let out a cheer of joy. Frightened, their out of his faces filled with excitement. He trembled. Li Qingshan forbade him from carrying the corpses. In the end, so he scooped up some raised his thumb and gave and shoved them into his mouth like title of demon among humans. He ate happily. This was like someone nothing Li Qingshan could do. Do you think I'm a whore? He could not be bothered to stop him. This child was very difficult with a demonic to not treat it as an angry concept of good, the corner of evil at all, or in other words, twitched. All the people he barely managed like to make a happy expression. They did not seem to have grown up in human society at all. And raised his head, one must know at the ceiling, that even in the wildlands, I don't have the right to enter the demon suppression hall at all, unless it was due to certain customs and traditions, or if they were forced to do so. They would not devour their own clansmen, let alone he was cursing father and the unraging monk. But if they were savages who grew up, the dauntless monk shook his head. He shouldn't be able to think. These demon folk are still as clearly as ever. Even wild beasts, they don't know how to repent. So crazy. Even this really had no idea is filled with evil from the bottom of their hearts. Had found demon folk are born with he was not afraid of judging others with the greatest malice. The Chan monastery of good was and still an orthodox right and wrong after all. Inverted. Surely they would not only go the Buddhas as far as the Western paradise some people can purify them, and then it's not something like this. So there's no need for you to get angry and senior brother reverently at Li Junior brother. We might not be able to purify them. Are you a demon general? But we can destroy these enemies of Buddha powerful just in case they grow up and cause even greater trouble. Li Qingshan said, "We can't be soft-hearted just because they look human or because they're young. You're a human." The dauntless monk stepped back in fright, vaguely warning the enraging monk that Li Qingshan was just laughed aloud. But he said there to be afraid of about his voice reverberated through the corridor. Li Qingshan was completely baffled. But there was no reply at all. This child was Li Qingshan's side, and when he saw him slaughter, then what's the demonification you speak of? He was actually all demon folk can demonify. He was human, just like this. This Duoj clenched his fists. I heard that his little face was bright red from holding back, and he even let out a gasp. In the end, only the color of his eyes changed slightly. His body relaxed, and his eyes were filled with anticipation. I'm still too young. Once I grow up,
I'll definitely become an extremely powerful demon king. Demon folk, demon king, Li Qingshan murmured. If he ignored his strange words and actions, Duoj was no different from a regular child. He wanted to be a scientist, wanted to be a president, and so on. Li Qingshan patted Duoj's head and said nothing more. Let's keep going. Are there no stronger opponents here? Venerable, you really are a vicious and brutal demon among humans. The place we're going to has a lot of powerful experts for us to kill. Duoj's eyes lit up in admiration. Then he said, I heard grandfather say that actually it doesn't matter if you're human. As long as you have a demon heart, everyone can become a demon. You'll definitely become a powerful demon king in the future. He seemed to be trying to comfort Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan shook his head with no idea how to react. With a gentle wave of his right hand, a rolling cloud rose up, lifting up Duoj as well. Afterwards, he said, all you need to do is point the way. Let's get to the place you're talking about quickly. The cloud took off with a swish. Duoj lay at the front, constantly pointing in a certain direction. The cloud soared through the maze-like demon suppression hall. Flying past thousands of prisons, Li Qingshan imagined the dignified manner in which the Chan monastery of Devanaga suppressed demons when this place was filled with prisoners in the past. After several millennia of recuperation, they would only become even more powerful. If his identity was exposed, he would probably struggle to avoid being suppressed. Demon folk appeared before him one by one. If they did not come to obstruct him, Li Qingshan would not pay any attention to them, but if they dared to block his path, he could not be bothered with doing anything either. He just rammed over with a cloud. Under his control, the cloud-treading mist subdued the soft and the hard, and it moved with startling speed. Everyone he rammed into would suffer broken bones and spurt out blood. However, these demon folk were all tough and possessed great vitality, so he had no idea whether they would die or not. The path gradually widened, and the twists and turns and branching paths decreased. However, more and more demon folk appeared, and they became stronger and stronger. Some of them even wielded weapons such as blades, spears, swords, and halberds. Their abnormalities became more and more severe too. The speed of the cloud naturally slowed down. With a bang, the cloud knocked away a blade-wielding demon folk, and the blade flew out of his hand. Duoj stuck his body out of the cloud and reached out to scoop it up. Holding it in his hand, he tossed aside the bone club he had just obtained and placed the bloody long sword on his back. However, it was taller than him, making him look a little comical. However, he looked very happy. His innocent look was no different from that of a mortal child who had obtained a favorite toy. Li Qingshan felt rather sorrowful. He was not a person who was overflowing with sympathy, but he would always feel some gentleness towards children. Children were always weak and powerless. Everything was bound by their environment. They were powerless to fight back when they were oppressed, humiliated, and oppressed. They could not distinguish themselves even when they were bewitched by others. By the time they grew up and could make their own decisions, they had already been twisted beyond recognition a long time ago. Perhaps I'm thinking of myself in the past. Li Qingshan exhaled and rubbed Duoj's head. Duoj shrunk his neck back and turned around. He seemed vigilant and uneasy. Don't worry. As long as you have no ill intentions towards me, I won't kill you, nor will I eat you. I'm not a demon folk, but a stupid human. Duoj stuttered. He had no idea what to say. Two huge, gilded doors appeared at the end of the path. Several dozen strangely shaped demon folk stood or sat in front of the doors, forming a circle. Two demon folk were currently locked in a battle to the death in the center, as the others made a ruckus on the side. Kill him! Kill him! They all watched over him covetously, ready to devour the flesh and blood of the loser. Seeing the cloud approach, they all turned around. Only the two demon folk continued to fight with bloodshot eyes, sinking their sharp teeth into each other's bodies viciously like two frenzied fighting dogs. One of the demon folk originally leaned against the gilded doors, but he suddenly stood up now. He was already far taller than humans. His entire body was riddled with muscles, making him seem like a metal tower. A crown protruded from his head like a longhorn beetle. The longhorn beetle demon folk emerged from the crowd and made his way towards Li Qingshan with heavy steps. The other demon folk all parted to form a path. Only the two demon folk continued to fight one another. The longhorn beetle demon folk did not even look at them. He stepped over them, and with a spurt and crack, blood sprayed and bones broke. The two demon folk were crushed in half, but their upper bodies still wrapped tightly around each other, tearing at one another furiously. The longhorn beetle demon folk arrived before Li Qingshan. His eyes were filled with lust as he stared straight at Little, and dripping with sticky saliva. You're tuning in to the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.